Hey there guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be painting a scene from Howl's Moving Castle on the Canson XL Watercolor Paper. So I just recently got this paper and I wanted to try it out. I've heard so many good things about it. I've heard throughout the years a lot of people talking about it. I know of a lot of artists that actually use this pad as a sketchbook instead of a pad, and I just really wanted to try it. I've tried the mixed media version of this paper. Spoiler alert, I hate it. I hate the texture. I hate how watercolor behaves in it. I hate how watercolor dries up chalky and weird in it. I don't like it. I just genuinely don't like it. Don't like the thickness, don't like anything about that paper. So trying this was definitely a curiosity of mine to see if this paper is worth the hype, since the other paper was definitely not worth the hype. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be trying out this paper, seeing if I like it, if I don't like it, and yeah. So before we get into my opinions, I want to talk a little bit about the piece. So this piece is from a scene from Howl's Moving Castle, as I mentioned before, and it's wherein Howl takes Sophie to his little countryside little house by the river thingy, right? And it's from the little house where they come out of when they come out from Howl's castle. So it's just that little house with all the flowers attached to it, all of the vines and all of the flowers around it, right? This scene is very green, it's very flowery, it's very whimsical, it's very Studio Ghibli. And it's such a beautiful scene, really colorful and vibrant, and I was really inspired to try it out. It's also a great scene to try out for this particular video because I thought it would be great to make a base layer using watercolors to add textures and differences and just let the watercolors do their thing in the background, and then adding the details and the finishing touches with gouache. I think that would be a great way to test out this paper, since it is watercolor paper, but I will probably use it more for mixed media with watercolors, gouaches, and maybe other stuff. So I wanted to really try out and see how both mediums would react to this paper, and this would also allow me to try multiple techniques. So I started off by sketching the house. I wanted the house to be the main thing. The rest I was going to wing it. I wanted to have a little bit more freedom of expression. Even though I did follow the reference, I was also allowing myself to just freely paint whatever, because this is like grass with flowers and everything, so I wanted to be free to try and just do it on my own. But I did want the house to be a little bit, more detailed and true to the reference. And then after that I did start with the base layer of watercolors. I started with the green parts, added multiple shades of green for the grass around the house, and then I went for the rooftop of the house with reds, oranges, and deep burgundies and stuff like that. And it didn't quite happen how I wanted it to happen on the roof, and I will go into that a little bit when we talk about the paper, but overall it didn't look that bad and I still like the way how it looks. And then I went for the walls of the house. It was a little bit hard to understand how they colored that part, so I did wing it a little bit, but I'm not mad about it. I enjoy how it looks in the end. So let's dive into the paper itself and my experience with it, right? So as I mentioned before, the mixed media version I definitely hated, and when I was buying this paper I was a little bit on the fence, because even though I was very curious to know how it worked, I was very scared that I wasn't gonna like it and end up having a pad of paper that I just didn't like. That I still have the mixed media one that I just use as scrap paper, honestly, because I genuinely hate it so much. So I was really, really scared, but I did take the plunge because you know, I'd rather know than not know if it's worth it. And like I've seen so many artists liking it, I really wanted to try it out. So right off the bat, one thing that I love about this paper is that it's hot pressed. So it doesn't have any textures, ridges, weirdness about the paper. It's watercolor paper still. It does still have that little texture of watercolor paper, but it doesn't have a rough texture, just how mixed media paper does, right? So that off the bat is definitely a plus for me. It's definitely a good point for me. It's how I like my watercolor paper, and definitely a plus for me. So I started off by taping up the paper. As you guys saw in the beginning, I did stick it to my clothing before, so it wouldn't stick to the paper to the point of ripping it. Now, in the end, it still rips off the paper. So I do think that one fault of this paper is if you're going to use tape to tape off the paper for your painting, it's probably going to rip, okay? I definitely glued it a lot in my clothing, and it still ripped a lot. Thankfully, it didn't rip the painting itself, but it did rip the paper, which is honestly a pet peeve for me and a very big turn off for me, because you risk ruining your paper. That being said, I still think the paper is worth it, okay? It's not a turn off to the point where I'm like, no, definitely not. I've had paper like that. This is not the case. I still think it's manageable, especially if you take the tape in a correct angle, and if you warm up the tape, it probably won't rip your paper, which I don't ever do. So now moving into the techniques that I tried in the paper, right? So I tried to do wet on wet on this paper and then let everything dry, and then do a little bit of dry painting, just regular watercolor painting. I love the wet on wet. I think it absorbed the water pretty well, but not too fast to the point where you couldn't do it, but not too slow to the point where you're never moving forward in your painting. So it was really nice. It did create textures, and the water was able to slush around with the pigments and everything. So I do really like how it looked, but I did notice some buckling. Now, do keep in mind, I didn't tape this to the table. I didn't stretch out the paper, nothing like that, okay? That's something I did in my previous video of the library art, and I didn't do it on this one because I genuinely wanted to see how it would buckle. So it buckled a little bit on the rooftop, and that is why the colors didn't end up creating patterns and stuff like that the same way that the grass around the house did, because it buckled and the pigments just went through to the middle of the roof and just mixed it all together and made one color. So that was annoying because it did ruin the texture part that I wanted to do for the painting, but it's also my fault, and it was also because I wanted to try it. Now, do keep in mind, it's the main place where it buckled. It didn't buckle anywhere else, and it did take a lot of water in that area. So if you tape it up, it probably won't buckle that much and won't be as annoying, but it did, and it's still something to note. It's not something that bothers me that much. Just tape down the paper to the table and it'll be fine, but it did happen for sure. Otherwise, I do like how the paint dried up on the paper. Like I mentioned before, the other paper made the paints look chalky, and these are the exact same watercolors. I've had them for years, and in this paper they dried up really well. They didn't dry up chalky and looking gross. They dried up really well, and the color is very vibrant, very present. The paper didn't absorb the pigment that much in a way where it would lose vibrancy. It looks really, really nice, and I just genuinely enjoyed it. Same goes for when I use gouache in it. I have no complaints. It works really well. It worked really well with gouache, and I do think that the paints worked really nicely. Maybe my mixing skills aren't that good. I do think that the colors could have looked more vibrant, but that's on me because I didn't mix it that well. But overall, I gotta say that it was a pleasant experience. So for my last thoughts about this, I genuinely like the paper. I genuinely was surprised with this experience, and have an overall positive review of it, and I will definitely continue using this paper. I don't feel like I'm gonna be wasting this paper at all. I'm gonna be using it for sure. If you've never tried it, definitely go ahead and try it, especially if you want like a big block of paper for not that much money. It's still a little bit more expensive than the paper that I usually use, which is the inart paper, but that paper is particularly cheap, but still very, very good. But this one is also very accessible, and definitely I would advise it if you'd like to make like bigger pieces of of watercolor pieces, mixed media pieces. Definitely advise you to check it out. And yeah, overall I really like the paper. I think it's worth it. I do understand the hype, and I am excited to try to continue and experiment with it in the future. If you guys would like an update on that, let me know, and I'll definitely keep you guys posted. So yeah, before I go, I do want to tell you guys about my new coffee shop. So I opened a Ko-fi account, and you can either buy me a coffee, which I would very much appreciate it, or you can check out my shop. I have a few coloring pages up on my shop. They're very nice. And I have some new backgrounds. So I made some backgrounds for October, and I made them Squid Game themed. So if you'd like some Squid Game backgrounds for your phone, definitely go check out my Ko-fi shop. The link will be down below. And yeah, it has a minimum amount of money that for you to purchase, but it's very symbolic, nothing too much, and you can give whatever you want. And it would mean a lot to me if you could support me there. And if you can, that is also very much fine, okay? Come on, follow me on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm there a lot more frequently than on YouTube, mind you, and I've been trying my best to keep a very frequent posting schedule on both platforms. So I'd really love it if you guys could support me over there. And yeah, the links will all be down below, so definitely check them out. And if you like this video, definitely leave it a like down below, and leave me a comment about what you think. And if you tried this paper, let a girl know what you think. And if you haven't yet, please do consider subscribing. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next week's video. Bye!